All right, today we're going to uncork something really interesting. Get ready to explore Kenyan wine.
Yeah, it's a surprise to a lot of people, but we're diving deep into why this East African nation, and we've got articles here and even excerpts from this book, Vinhos to Kenya. Anyway, we're going to figure out why Kenya is becoming kind of a hot spot in the wine world.
I bet you know Kenya, famous for safaris, incredible wildlife, but now it sounds like we can add vineyards to the list. Am I right?
You heard right. And it's not just a fad. Our sources suggest that Kenya could really be a major player in the wine world soon enough.
All right. Color me intrigued, but honestly, when I think wine country, Kenya doesn't exactly come to mind. So what's the deal? Can you actually, really grow grapes there?
It's amazing how Kenya breaks the mold.
Yeah.
Picture this. High altitude vineyards with that volcanic soil overlooking the Great Rift Valley.
Whoa, hold on. Vineyards in the Great Rift Valley? You mean the place with all the wildlife?
Exactly. And that unique terroir, you combine that with those cool nights, and you get grapes that ripen slowly, which means, well, wines that are exploding with flavor. You won't find this character anywhere else in the world, I can tell you that.
So, am I hearing lions and Cabernet Sauvignon in the same sentence here? This
And
is wild.
it really is something, and it's not even just the location that throws you for a loop. While you will find your usual suspects, Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, but these Kenyan winemakers, they're also experimenting with varieties you won't find anywhere else, indigenous grapes unique to Kenya.
Now, that's what I call adventurous drinking. So, are we talking completely new flavors here? What do these grapes bring to the party?
Oh, they really do. They open up this whole new world. Think cedar, a little spice, maybe even a floral note in there somewhere. It's like a chance to try something totally new.
Man, now I am curious about how this tastes, but are they mixing these special grapes with the more, well, familiar ones or keeping them separate?
Honestly, it's a real mix of both.
Yeah.
You'll find some winemakers going all in on single varietal wines just from these indigenous grapes. And then you've got others, they like to blend them with more international varieties, just add a little something extra.
So it's not just a copycat thing. They're really taking a chance with the local stuff and experimenting.
Absolutely. And this whole local pride thing, it goes beyond the grapes themselves and it goes deep, rooted in how they approach sustainability.
Let's definitely talk about that because sustainability is huge in the wine world these days. So is it like more than just a trend over there?
Oh, it's not a trend. It's like the heart and soul of their winemaking. A lot of these Kenyan winemakers are all about the organic and biodynamic practices. They're not just growing grapes, they're really looking after the land.
That makes a lot of sense, especially with a place so unique and delicate. But good practices aside, doesn't it all come down to taste?
Yeah.
What makes Kenyan wines, stand out when you take a sip?
Well, they're known for a bright acidity, intense fruit flavors, and this distinct minerality, which makes sense with the volcanic soil.
Hmm.
It's one of those wines that really captures the essence of a place.
So if I were to pour a glass, what am I in for? What's it going to taste like?
All right, picture this. A Sauvignon Blanc that just bursts with passion fruit and guava, or maybe a Syrah, intense blackberry, a kick of peppercorn, and that earthy, almost volcanic flavor in the background.
Oh, you mentioned something earlier about acacia wood and aging. Now, that's not something you hear about every day. So tell me more about that.
It's a perfect example of how they blend, their traditions with new ideas. Acacia trees, well, they're native to Kenya, and they've been using them forever in all sorts of crafts. And when you use acacia wood for aging, it does something special to the wine. You get this subtle spice, a hint of smokiness. It's pretty cool.
So it's like they're not just making wine, they're making something that tells a story, something that reflects Kenya.
You got it. Expressing their cultural identity through the land, and it's more than just the big guys. Your research mentioned something about a grassroots movement.
I did see that. Sounds like a real entrepreneurial spirit driving this whole industry.
Absolutely, you have these small, often family-run wineries. They're popping up all over, each one trying new things, experimenting with different grapes and techniques. It's a really exciting time to be into Kenyan wine, I'd say.
It would be amazing to actually talk to some of these winemakers, get their perspective. Were there any names that stood out in your research?
A few, for sure. Your sources talked about Sula Vineyards. They're big on the organic viticulture. And then you've got Grover Vineyards. They're experimenting with something really interesting, sparkling wines made from indigenous grapes.
Sparkling wine from Kenya. Okay, now that's something I need to try. But for those of us who aren't planning a trip to Kenya anytime soon, how easy is it to find these wines? Can I just walk into any store?
Well, it's getting easier, that's for sure. You'll find them online. Definitely some specialized wine shops, even popping up on restaurant lists here and there. It might take a little effort, hunting down one of these hidden gems, but that's part of the fun.
I like the sound of that. So let's say I do find myself staring at a bottle of Kenyan Cabernet Sauvignon. What should I pair that with?
Oh man, this is where it gets good. Kenyan cuisine, it's like this explosion of flavors. You've got fragrant curries, grilled meats, all sorts of dishes with ginger, cumin, coriander, the works. A Cabernet Sauvignon with those bold fruit and earthy notes that would go perfectly with Nyama Choma. It's their grilled meat dish. Have you ever had that?
Okay, now I'm starving. I have to admit, before this whole deep dive, I knew nothing about Kenyan wine, but you've really opened my eyes. What's next for them? What does the future hold for this wine region?
Honestly, the future is looking bright for these guys. They're already getting noticed internationally, winning awards, even catching the eye of some big-time wine critics.
So you think we'll be seeing Kenyan wine country on the cover of travel magazines soon?
I wouldn't be surprised, not at all. Tourism is another area where they see a ton of potential, and I get it. I mean, picture this. You're sipping on award-winning wines, and you're surrounded by this mind-blowing scenery. It's a no-brainer, really.
It sounds like they've got it all. The quality's there, the story's amazing, the sustainability, and that landscape. Forget about it.
And don't forget the passion. These Kenyan winemakers, they're so dedicated, and they're not afraid to ex experiment, push the boundaries, change how we see wine.
It's like they're rewriting the rule book, one bottle at a time, but like any new industry, I'm sure they've got challenges. What are they up against?
Climate change is a big one, and that's true for everyone these days. All the wine regions are dealing with that. They're having to adapt, with the weather changing, and then there's the whole getting into the market thing, competing with the big dogs who've been around forever.
So it's more than just the wine. They've got to market it, tell their story, convince people to try something new.
100%. But from what I read in these sources, I think they're doing great. People are more adventurous now, more open to new things, especially sustainable options. So the more people hear about Kenyan wines, the more they'll realize what they've been missing.
It's pretty cool to think we might be seeing the start of something huge, a major wine region. This is just the beginning of their story. So for our listeners who are now hopefully as fascinated by Kenyan wine as I am, what's the one thing you really want them to remember?
Just be open, try new
Oh,
things. Don't be
yeah.
afraid to explore. Step outside that comfort zone a little.
Mm.
You might just be surprised. Who knows? You could find your new favorite.
I think that's great advice for life in general. Sometimes the best adventures are the ones we least expect. So next time you're at the store looking at wine, do yourself a favor, find a bottle from Kenya, open it up, and just see where it takes you.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. And that wraps up our deep dive into the world of Kenyan wine. Until next time, happy exploring, everyone.